Hi, I'm Jay Gross, professional television producer and reporter. Perhaps you may have seen me or heard my name on ABC News programs, Cable News Network, or the Satellite News Channel. Although it's usually been part of my job, I still love to shoot video in my spare time, especially children's, sports, weddings, you name it. And that's what this tape is all about, shooting video using a typical home video camera. If you watch and listen closely, by the end of this tape, you will know and understand a lot more about the basics of videography and how to achieve the best possible results with your equipment. Let's start by going over the camera piece by piece. First, the viewfinder, that miniature black and white TV screen you look into. Slightly bigger than the face of a wristwatch. It lets you frame your shot, determine the exposure, and set your focus before you roll tape. Remember, the picture in the viewfinder will always be black and white. What you see in the viewfinder is determined by the three functions of your camera's lens. Lens function number 1, the iris. Just like the iris in your eye, it determines how much light will enter the camera and how your picture will be exposed. The iris itself is usually a disc or wheel closest to where the lens connects to the main body of the camera. Most home video cameras have optional settings for manual or automatic operation of the iris. When set on automatic, the iris will sense the proper reading and automatically set itself. This makes shooting very easy. Unfortunately, it does not always give you the best possible picture. Quite often, manual adjustment of the iris will produce a better picture. Whenever you're shooting, if you have time, remember anyone can set the iris on automatic. Only the pro adjusts the iris for the best possible exposure. And speaking of exposure, before we get to the second function of the camera's lens, remember, the camera is extremely light sensitive and should never be pointed at bright objects, especially the sun. When your picture is overexposed, you'll see it distorted through the viewfinder. Experiment and find out how the ideal picture looks in your viewfinder. When the picture looks overexposed or hot, immediately take steps to iris down or you'll burn your camera tube. Tube damage is never covered by warranty. Now for the second or middle part of the lens, the zoom. It's almost always automatic and almost always overused by the amateur. More on that a little later on. A zoom lens allows you to move subjects closer to the camera by zooming in, or further away by zooming out. By moving your zoom lens in or out, you can easily determine how you want to frame or set up your shot. Without a zoom, you'd have to physically move your camera closer or further from your desired subject to set the shot. As you'll also see, the tighter you zoom in, the narrower your perspective becomes. The wider or more zoomed out you are, the larger your overall perspective will be. The third and final part of the lens is the focus ring, the fine-tuning control closest to the front lens glass. When using a zoom lens, keeping your picture in focus during the zoom is crucial. Knowing how to focus a zoom lens video camera is not simply a matter of aim, focus, and shoot. The proper procedure is to zoom all the way in as tight as your lens will go, usually past the framing of your desired subject. Then, no matter how awkward it seems, sharp focus. Now when you pull back or zoom out to your desired picture composition, the lens should be perfectly focused on your subject and in relation to your background or depth. Less expensive lenses may require a slight adjustment after pullback. However, if your picture consistently does not stay in focus during zooms, having set your focus as I'm instructing, your lens may need service and adjustment from your dealer or technician. The latest technology in some home video cameras includes automatic focusing. Convenient and easy to use, definitely yes, but make sure the focus is sharp and crisp. In some situations, such as low light, you may still have to focus manually for the sharpest picture. Another function of most home video camera lenses is the macro adjustment. For extreme close-ups or extreme detail, you will have to adjust the macro ring on your lens. If you're zoomed in all the way and can't focus because you're too close to your subject, you need your macro focus. The macro adjustment moves the position of the lens in relation to the camera tube, allowing extreme close-ups. Make sure when you're finished you return the macro ring to its fixed position, or your camera's normal zoom lens won't hold focus or function properly. And now that you know how to work your camera, let's get ready to go over some of those basic shots. But first, some very important adjustments. First, choosing the proper filter. Will you be shooting under indoor artificial light or outdoors in natural lighting conditions? Adjust the filter on your camera accordingly. Most simply have an indoor and outdoor setting. Next comes white balancing your camera, so colors will look true to life for the existing light conditions. Failure to white balance properly or use the correct filter will give you dominant blue, green, or red video. By focusing the camera on white and using the white balance control, you're setting your camera's color temperature to the prevailing available light. Remember, when using lights indoors, and you certainly should, white balance with the lights on. The next piece of advice I'm going to give you is to invest in a tripod. You see, the smaller and lighter your camera is, the shakier your video will be without sticks. Sticks, or a pod, are video slang terms for a tripod. Make sure the head, the part that holds your camera, is neither too weak nor too strong for the weight of your camera. But even an inexpensive tripod is better than no tripod at all. Video shot without a tripod, with the horizon constantly moving, looks like you're standing in a rowboat. If you do shoot handheld, remember, the tighter your shot, that is, the more zoomed in you are, the harder it is to steady your camera. Whenever working handheld, stick with medium and wide shots. We'll discuss handheld shooting techniques a little later on. Now let's define the 3 basic static shots most often shot from a tripod. First, the wide shot or establishing shot, sometimes called the cover shot. Your lens will be zoomed out halfway or more, and the shot will have a wide field of view establishing where you are. Next comes the close-up. I consider it the bread and butter shot of video. I consider a close-up or tight shot to be anything where the subject occupies more than half the screen or frame. This is especially true when shooting faces and people. It's also a matter of technology. The poorer the quality of your camera and lens, the better results you'll get with tighter range shots. Another reason people shy away from tight shots is they don't use a tripod, and naturally find holding these tight shots steady is a real tough job. I guess you figured out by now, shots that are neither wide nor tight are medium shots. Beside the obvious, I generally consider medium shots to be those with more detail and definition than wide shots, but without the expression, emotion, and impact of the tight shot or close-up. Now let's put the zoom to work with some of these shots. I said before, the zoom is overused by the amateur hobbyist. Have you ever asked yourself, why am I zooming? Using the zoom all the time is like using the cruise control device on your car all the time, or worse yet, using it in bumper-to-bumper traffic. A zoom, when used effectively, is generally to show perspective. Again, it's very difficult to zoom smoothly without a tripod. To use a zoom for showing perspective, start tight with a narrow field of view. When you zoom out or pull back, think of it as unveiling or revealing the full picture. This technique can be applied for aesthetic value, shock value, or just orientation. You may have to adjust your horizon on a zoom by tilting your tripod and camera up or down during the zoom. Before you roll tape, practice the shot and make these adjustments. Nobody wants to see the same shot attempted on your tape several times till you get it right. To zoom in, set your focus the same way. Pull out to frame your starting point, then start your zoom in. A zoom in is generally used to capture emotion, establish closeness, and put more isolation and detail in the picture. There are 2 other camera moves used in conjunction with both zooms and static shots. As usual, they work smoothest from a tripod. First is a tilt. A tilt is the vertical movement of the camera up or down. Secondly, there's the pan. A pan is a horizontal movement of the camera in a swift or slow sweeping movement. A pan shows width and should generally be used to follow action or show a subject that by itself is too wide for the frame. Okay, how about some shots without a tripod? First, the high angle shot. High because you're shooting down on your subject. Usually as little as a chair will do the trick. Film directors traditionally believe high-angle shots portray weakness. Well, if a high-angle shot shows weakness, the low-angle shot, according to convention, shows strength. All these shots I'm describing are established techniques. You must practice with them, experiment with them, and learn to use them in the right situation. Another little trick shot for video is the ground level shot. No tripod needed here, just a little bending down. Place the camera on the ground, kneel by your viewfinder, and set up your shot, be it a wide, medium, close-up, or zoom. I use the ground level shot to put my audience in the action. Other unconventional handheld video shots include the underarm brace shot from a standing position, and from a sitting position, a between-the-leg shot. These two shots are examples of unusual and creative camera angles using the body as the tripod. The next area we're going to cover is basic video lighting. I say basic because lighting in itself is a separate profession from video photography. Let's start outdoors, where lighting is usually determined by the position and strength of the sun. The number one rule in outdoor video photography, that is if you're looking for a bright, evenly lit picture, is to keep the sun behind you. Usually, even if it's overcast or cloudy, this rule still applies. Shoot accordingly. Whenever there's sunshine, shooting toward the sun will produce a picture with dark shadows and an unsatisfactory lighting situation known as backlit or silhouette. Very artistic, but not very useful in home video photography as a rule. One notable exception, in low outside light, for example sunrise or sunset, you can shoot in any direction, but be careful of tube damage by starting too early on sunsets. You can get excellent results in low outdoor light by manually adjusting your iris to let more light in for a brighter picture. But it's indoor lighting that's by far the most overlooked aspect of home video photography. A favorite selling point for video cameras is their low light sensitivity. True, your camera probably has a sensitivity or gain switch that helps it to function in low light conditions. Using the sensitivity switch also deteriorates picture quality, or in technical terms, makes it noisier. What you want to do is find yourself a video lighting kit. Usually they start pretty inexpensively, but are worth their weight in gold if you want your video to look more professional than amateur and more lifelike than electronic. Most lighting kits come with at least 2 lights and stands. Without getting too technical, think of lights the same way you think of the sun. Only now you can control and change the light's position and intensity. Shadows will be your biggest bugaboo. One way to disperse the shadows is by using photo umbrellas to diffuse the light. Lighting may seem like a hassle, but it's worth the effort. If your light kit doesn't have an umbrella attachment and shadows are a problem, aim your lights straight up at the ceiling. They won't be as intense, but will still be 100% better than using no lights at all. The final type of lighting I will mention is a portable battery-powered light that mounts on top of your camera. Although in confined areas this light tends to cast harsh shadows, it's a convenient and excellent light source at parties and in situations where you can't feasibly set up stand lights. A portable battery light can also be used in conjunction with stand lights. When used with other lights, it's usually called a fill light, in that it fills in the wattage and power necessary to ideally light a scene or subject. Battery lights are also used to enable shooting in complete darkness and will produce an excellent picture in a limited area. A properly lit indoor situation means no need to use your camera's low light sensitivity switch, although sometimes you will find you do need it. But the pro always reaches for the light kit before accepting a noisy picture, courtesy of the low light sensitivity gain switch. Okay, let's go shooting as soon as we check our pre-shooting checklist. If we're using a portable VCR, are the batteries freshly charged? Are we using brand new high-grade videotape, no longer than a 1-hour T60 VHS or Beta L250? Long tapes tend to have tension problems. And speaking of tension, to set the tape tension properly for your machine, a brand new tape should always be wound all the way forward and reversed before shooting. No exceptions. If you're in a situation where you may have to change tapes fast, like a wedding, have your extra tapes wound and rewound in advance. Also remember, portable VCRs are fragile. Think about buying a rugged video bag for yours. A good one will have pouches for extra tapes, batteries, and accessories. They also keep dust, dirt, and moisture away. One final suggestion: always shoot on the fastest speed your equipment has. Can't emphasize this enough. Without getting too technical, the faster your tape moves, the better your video will look. Conserving tape using slower speeds is penny wise and pound foolish. If you'll be editing half-inch tape, you must record on the fast speed to be compatible with the editing gear. This concludes part 1 of our program. If you've ever heard someone call a television set the box or the tube, keep that description as a vivid image in your mind whenever you're shooting video. Because the simple #1 rule in video is remember that the television screen is small. Therefore, to show your subject clearly, and that's the idea here, folks, you must show your subject relatively large within the frame of a television set. When you look through that viewfinder, you're determining just that. How predominant will my subject be in the shot? I re-emphasize this most important point now because we're going to discuss and demonstrate tips for working with children. Video of children and family gatherings are the most common use of home video cameras. Besides using a tripod and using lights indoors and keeping your shots generally in the medium to tight range, there are 2 other key factors in successful video photography with children. The first is bring your camera down to their level. Simple enough. There is no other way to compensate for the size and awkward height difference as simply and effectively as shooting on their level. Try a ground level shot, a low angle, a tilt-up, or some of the more unconventional positions to capture the actions from a child's perspective. Secondly, and this depends on children's ages and personalities, you need to work on making them comfortable and natural around your camera. If they're not comfortable or act unnatural when they know you're shooting, you'll have to try and work candidly. In other words, shoot when they don't think you are or know you are. Making children natural and comfortable around the video camera will pay off with uninhibited, memorable footage. Next, what happens when children aren't as close to the camera because they're involved in an activity or sports? The same theory applies here. Use a couple of wide shots to show what the activity is and where it's taking place. Then, using the various moves you've learned on your tripod, try and single out your subject, framing the action in the medium to tight range whenever possible. The tighter you shoot action shots, the more likely they'll jump out of the frame on you. But the wider you shoot them, the less recognizable your subject will be. Above all, remember, you have one low-power TV camera. You are not Wide World of Sports or network TV. We're now going to talk about shooting weddings. My first suggestion is once you know the date and time of the ceremony, visit the church or wherever the wedding will take place. Do this at the exact time the ceremony is called for. This is very helpful in planning where you'll shoot from and what the lighting conditions will be. If you know in advance it will be poor lighting, you can discuss the use of lights with the appropriate people. Another possibility is to attend the actual wedding rehearsal and plan your shooting as the bridal party plans the details of the ceremony. Make sure you're positioned to photograph the bride and groom's faces during the entire ceremony. Avoid profiles and definitely avoid a rear view. It's pretty difficult to capture the beauty, not to mention the emotion of a wedding ceremony, focused on the happy couples behinds. Pre-planning will avoid this. Secondly, shoot all your audience and family shots before the procession begins. Although some people may disagree, I firmly believe it distracts from the main event to keep panning away from the bride and groom to the audience during the ceremony. If you're using a directional microphone on the camera, it will also interrupt the audio. If you are using a directional camera mic, get as close to those speaking as you can. Otherwise, position a microphone capable of picking up clear, understandable audio. Audio is the most neglected component of wedding videography. No matter how good your pictures are, if the sound isn't audible, you've only accomplished 50% of the job. When it comes to wedding receptions, or for that matter parties in general, keep in mind 2 points. First, adults are very self-conscious and usually make lousy subjects. Therefore, your best party video is often candid once again, That is when people don't know you're shooting them. I think your best wedding party video is a formal or organized event within the festivities, like a toast or cutting of the cake. Go for the quality footage. Don't just shoot because you have plenty of tape, unless you plan to do some serious editing. Although it's a wonderful memory, a long wedding tape full of uneventful footage will detract from the production and make those watching it bored to tears and less appreciative of your effort. Now let's briefly review the highlights of this program. Don't forget to choose the proper filter and white balance. Generally stick with medium and tight range shots. Whenever possible, use a tripod. Whenever shooting indoors, use lights. Do not constantly use the zoom. Do not focus while your tape is rolling. Don't always rely on the automatic iris and automatic focus for the best picture. When shooting children, keep the camera at their eye level. When shooting weddings, concentrate on the bride and groom. When shooting sports, remember you have only one small camera. Don't try and be Wide World of Sports. Always go for quality footage, not quantity. Finally, have fun and take good care of your equipment, and it'll take good care of you. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this tape and will review it from time to time to sharpen up your skills. You know, video camera technology is changing so fast it's hard to keep up with sometime. So before we say goodbye, here are a few technology changes to be aware of in the new line of video cameras. The hottest new feature is called Constant Automatic White Balancing. Cameras with this new feature no longer need the operator to select an indoor or outdoor filter or perform any white balance functions to attain proper colors. Like most automatic functions, we suggest you select a camera that also allows you to manually adjust filter and white balance for unusual lighting situations. There are some other changes as well, including a viewfinder that has a colored monitor instead of traditional black and white. Some cameras are also using solid-state microchips instead of tubes, and some cameras and recorders are now one-piece units called camcorders. These new gadgets make operating a video camera easier, but remember, there's no substitution for the basic shooting skills and techniques demonstrated in this tape. That will always be up to you, the video photographer.